Yes, this is the creative challenge for depth and value. So what you're going to need for this is some plain paper or a sketchbook page, a pencil. A wooden number 2 is best because you're going to have to shade very dark and use a lot of pressure, an eraser, and then your grayscale from yesterday for reference to make sure that you're getting dark enough. So the directions. The first thing you do, because you're going to work with layers, the first layer, you're going to start drawing 6 or 7 rounded shapes, organic shapes. So leave very little space in between the shapes. As you can see, it's really close. The space outside the shapes is going to stay white, and this is your layer 1. Layer 2, inside each of those shapes, you're going to draw some curved lines and start at like one edge of the shape and just kind of curve it around till it meets the other line, and it ends up looking kind of like cow print. It creates other shapes inside. You can take and, for example, this, I started in this space, I drew this curve, and then I just kind of skipped over the white part and drew it here and then down here, and it kind of looks like an egg. That's something you can do. But you want to have these kind of narrow pathways and these kind of large shapes inside your main shape. And this shape in the middle is what I'm using for reference. This is what it looks like at this stage. Right before that, it looked like this. It was just this kind of kidney bean shape. And now it's like a cow print kidney bean. So now the next thing you're going to do is shade. So those pathways, shade them a tint of gray. That's between white and medium gray. It's number 2 on your grayscale. And smudge it to blend the gray evenly. You can smudge with paper that's folded up. You could use your finger. Or if you're at home and you have Q-tips, Q-tips are awesome for this. And they're small enough to fit. And I really wish I would have thought of that. But I did it when I was making your example. So that's why I have my note here, because I was working fast with this. I got a little bit sloppy. The whole thing ends up being better, and you won't have to work as hard at the end if you take your time and do this neatly. So here's that top middle shape again, the kidney bean shape. And here it is over on the side, and I just had shaded the little pathway gray. So now, since you have those shapes and you have that pathway, inside those small shapes, you're going to do the same thing you did before. Take some curvy lines and go side to side or point to point and make parts of other shapes on the inside. This creates even more pathways and smaller shapes. And again, this is the kidney bean we're using for reference, and that's what's blown up down here. So there's that light gray, and then I drew like this line here, and this line there to make a shape, and this line here, and I drew this shape, and then I thought that space was too wide, so I just made another little line, and just so on and so forth. Next time, you shade. So those pathways that you just created, you're going to do that a number 3, a shade on your grayscale, and smudge it to blend. Again, the Q-tip would be a good idea, or a tightly rolled piece of paper, because as you can see, I have smudges in different places. I'm really messy. And I apologize for that, but you learn from my mistakes too. So here's that top middle shape again. And here it is over on the side, and you can see the dark parts are shaded in. And then your background is black. So those remaining shapes you want to get as dark as possible. So press down really, really hard with your pencil, number 5 on your grayscale. When you look at this in the middle top shape for reference, you can see how the light is bouncing off the dark areas. That's how dark I was. It got reflective, and that's why it looks silver. And remember that if you ever have to draw something to make it look silver in a photograph, if you press down pencil really hard, it'll look black on paper but silver in the light. Now this is where I am right now. So I have the white is the outside, and then we have our light gray paths, then we have our dark gray paths, and then we have our shiny blacks. So then you clean it up, and if you were careful all the way along, you won't have to work as hard at this step. But I wasn't very careful. I was really messy. So what I did was I went back into the dark areas and made them uniform. So if there were areas that weren't quite, see, like there's part that I missed that weren't quite a solid black, I went over them. I went all over my lines and made them much darker, and that helps things to pop. And then clean your eraser off if your eraser's dirty. And remember, you can do that by rubbing it on a rough surface. And then erase all the smudges from your white area, the outside area, so that's nice and clean. To take a picture, the best picture, go into a room that doesn't have any artificial lights on, and take the picture in a place where it's not in the sunlight, where there isn't any direct light hitting it, and that way you won't get your silver reflections. If you know how to crop and edit your photos, go ahead and crop it so that it is just, just the picture of what you drew. And if you don't know how to crop, that's okay, because we can do that later. And upload to Classroom, and that's it. So have fun and experiment. If you want to keep going and add even more layers, you can. Just make them darker and darker gray, and you end with black. That's it.